Hey kiddos, I am sorry it has taken me longer to get through the chapters than I had expected, but we're going to start chapter 6 today. Now remember on chapter 5 we had a few words that I had you stop and think about. One was dismal. Did you check out what that meant? Dismal. The sentence was, those were the only two things to be seen in the dark sky. They made a dismal group. Even the way it sounds in the sentence, can't you tell that probably means negative, dismal? There was another one, but I'm not seeing it. Marco Polo me if you remember which one it was. But chapter 6. Let's see where we ended on chapter 5 first. The Queen. Remember, she thought that Uncle Andrew was what must be a magician and be king of a world, or ruler of a world. And at the end, I'm going to reread the last chapter just to help get us back in the story. "Minions!" cried the Queen, turning in rage upon Polly and seizing her hair at the very top, where it hurts most. But in so doing, she let go of both children's hands. "Now!" shouted Digory, and "Quick!" shouted Polly. They plunged their left hands into their pockets. They did not even need to put the rings on. The moment they touched them, the whole of that dreary world vanished from their eyes. They were rushing upward, and a warm green light was growing nearer overhead. So that's where we stopped. Chapter 6, the beginning of Uncle Andrew's troubles. And let me grab my phone real quick. I need to set a timer so I don't overread it, since we know we can only time it for so long. Let me get a timer going. All right, here we go. I'm excited. The beginning of Uncle Andrew's troubles. "Let go, let go!" screamed Polly. "I'm not touching you," said Digory. Then their heads came out of the pool, and once more the sunny quietness of the wood between the worlds was all about them, and it seemed richer and warmer and more peaceful than ever after the stillness and ruin of the place they had just left. I think that if they had been given the chance, they would have again forgotten who they were and where they came from, and would have laid down and enjoyed themselves half asleep, listening to the growing of the trees. Do you remember how this place, the wood between the worlds, it's almost like it relaxed you so much you didn't even want to leave? Can you imagine? Just listen to the trees growing. But this time there was something that kept them as wide awake as possible, for as soon as they had got out to the grass, they found that they were not alone. The Queen, or the witch, whichever you'd like to call her, had come up with them, holding on fast by Polly's hair. That was why Polly had been shouting, "Let go!" This proved, by the way, another thing about the rings which Uncle Andrew hadn't told Digory because he didn't know it himself. In order to jump from world to world by using one of those rings, you don't need to be wearing or touching it yourself. It is enough if you are touching someone who is touching it. And that way they work like a magnet. And everyone knows that if you pick up a pen with a magnet, and any other pin which is touching the first pin will come too. Remember when we did our unit on batteries and magnetism, and we did some work with magnets, so you can probably picture that. Now that you saw her in the wood, Queen Jadis looked different. She was much paler than she had been, so pale that hardly any of her beauty was left. And she was stooped and seemed to be finding it hard to breathe, as if the air of that place stifled her. Neither of the children felt the least bit afraid of her now. let go of my hair," said Polly. "What do you mean by it?" "Here, let go of her hair at once," said Digory. They both turned and struggled with her. They were stronger than she, and in a few seconds they had forced her to let go. She reeled back, panting, and there was a look of terror in her eye. "Quick, Digory," said Polly. "Change rings and into the home pool." "Help! Help! Mercy!" cried the witch in a faint voice, staggering after them. "Take me with you. You cannot mean to leave me in this horrible place. It's killing me." "It's a reason of state," said Polly spitefully. "Like when you killed all those people in your old world. Do be quick, Digory." They had put on their green rings, but Digory said, "Oh, bother! What are we going to do?" He couldn't help but feel a little sorry for the Queen. "Oh, don't be such a donkey," said Polly. 10 to 1 she's only shamming. Do come on." And then both children plunged into the home pool. "It's a good thing we made that mark," thought Polly. But as they jumped, Digory felt that a large, cold finger and thumb had caught him by the ear. And as they sank down and the confused shapes of our own world began to appear, the grip of that finger and thumb grew stronger. The witch was apparently recovering her strength. Digory struggled and kicked, but it was no use. In a moment they found themselves in Uncle Andrew's study, and there was Uncle Andrew himself, staring at the wonderful creature that Digory had brought back from beyond the world. And well he might stare. Digory and Polly stared too. There was no doubt that the witch had got over her faintness, and now that one saw her in our own world, with ordinary things around her, she fairly took one's breath away. In Charn, she had been alarming enough. In London, she was terrifying. For one thing, they had not realized till now how very big she was. Hardly human was what Digory thought when he looked at her. And he may have been right, for some say there is giantish blood in the royal family of Charn. But even her height was nothing compared to her beauty, her fierceness, and her wildness. She looked 10 times more alive than most of the people one meets in London. Uncle Andrew was bowing and rubbing his hands and looking, to tell the truth, extremely frightened. He seemed a little shrimp of a creature beside the witch. And yet, as Polly said afterward, there was a sort of likeness between her face and his. Something in the expression. Did you notice how they said again, and yet, as Polly said afterward, there's another context clue that tells us they're going to survive a lot of these adventures and reflect on them and talk about them afterwards. It was the look that all wicked magicians have, the mark which Jadis had said she could not find in Digory's face. One good thing about seeing the two together was that you would never again be afraid of Uncle Andrew, any more than you'd be afraid of a worm after you had met a rattlesnake, or afraid of a cow after you had met a mad bull. Pooh, thought Digory to himself, him, a magician, not much. Now she's the real thing. Uncle Andrew kept on rubbing his hands and bowing. He was trying to say something very polite, but his mouth had gone all dry so that he could not speak. His experiment with the rings, as he called it, was turning out to be more successful than he liked. For though he had dabbled in magic for years, he had always left all the dangers, as far as one can tell, to the other people. Nothing at all like this had happened to him before. Then Jadis spoke, not very loud, but there was something in her voice that made the whole room quiver. "Where is the magician who has called me into this world?" Madame, gasped Uncle Andrew. "I am most honored, highly gratified, a most unexpected pleasure. If only I had the opportunity of making preparations, Where is the magician, fool?" said Jadis. I am, Madame. I hope you will excuse any or liberty these naughty children may have taken. I assure you there was no intention." "You?" said the Queen, in a still more terrible voice. Then in one stride she crossed the room, seized a great handful of Uncle Andrew's gray hair, and pulled his head back so that his face looked up into hers. Then she studied his face just as she had studied Digory's in the Palace of Charm. He blinked and licked his lips nervously all the time. At last she let him go so suddenly that he reeled back against the wall. "I see," she said scornfully. "You are a magician of a sort. Stand up, dog, and don't sprawl there as if you were speaking to your equals. How do you come to know magic? You are not of royal blood, I'll swear." "Well, not perhaps in the strict sense," stammered Uncle Andrew. "Not exactly royal, ma'am. The Ketterleys are, however, a very old family, an old Dorsetshire family, ma'am." "Peace," said the witch. "I see what you are. You are a little peddling magician who works by rules and books. There is no real magic in your blood and heart. Your kind was made an end of in my world 1,000 years ago. But here I shall allow you to be my servant." "I should be most happy, delighted to be of any service. But my pleasure, I assure you." "Peace! You talk far too much. Listen to your first task. I see we are in a large city. Procure for me at once a chariot, or a flying carpet, or a well-trained dragon, or whatever is usual for royal and noble persons in your land. Then bring me to the place where I can get clothes and jewels and slaves fit for my rake. Tomorrow I will begin the conquest of the world." "I'll go and order a cab at once," gasped Uncle Andrew. Now, would that be your response to what she had just said? What are you thinking about Uncle Andrew? Is he a strong person or not so strong person? What do you think about him? Think about that. "Stop," said the witch, just as he reached the door. "Do not dream of treachery. My eyes can see through walls and into the minds of men. They will be on you wherever you go. At the first sign of disobedience, I will lay such spells on you that anything you sit down on will feel like red, hot iron. And whenever you lie in a bed, there will be invisible blocks of ice at your feet. Now go." The old man went out, looking like a dog with its tail between its legs. The children were now afraid that Jadis would have something to say to them about what had happened in the wood. As it turned out, however, she never mentioned it either then or afterward. I think, and Digory thinks too, that her mind was a sort which cannot remember the quiet place at all, and however often you take her there, and however long you left her there, she would still know nothing about it. Now that she was left alone with the children, she took no notice of either of them, and that was like her too. In charm she had taken no notice of Polly till the very end, because Digory was the one she wanted to make use of. Now that she had Uncle Andrew, she took no notice of Digory. I expect most witches are like that. They are not interested in things or people unless they can use them. They are terribly practical. So there was silence in the room for a minute or two, but you could tell by the way Jadis tapped her foot on the floor she was growing impatient. Presently she said, as if to herself, "What is the old fool doing? I should have brought a whip." She stalked out of the room in pursuit of Uncle Andrew without a glance at the children. "Whew," said Polly, letting out a long breath of relief. "And now I must get home. It's frightfully late, and I shall catch it." "Well, do come back as soon as you can," said Digory. "This is simply ghastly having her here. We must make some sort of plan." "That's up to your uncle now," said Polly. "It was he who started all this messing about with magic. All the same, you will come back, won't you? Hang it all, you can't leave me alone in a scrape like this. I shall go home by the tunnel, said Polly, rather coldly. That'll be the quickest way. And if you want me to come back, hadn't you better say you're sorry? And with that, we'll stop. But I'm going to come right back and read the rest of chapter 6. I hope you're enjoying it.